Good afternoon, everybody. I thought I'd better come out and say something because I could see that you were all in a great mass here, and I apologise for being slow with coming down. You know, you want to ask my views on Europe, don't you? Let me tell you where I've got to, which is that I've made up my mind. There should be no confusion between the wonders of Europe and holidays in Europe and fantastic food and friendships and whatever else you get from Europe with a political project that is basically going on now for decades, which Britain has been a member of since 1975, and I now think is in real danger of getting out of proper democratic control. That is my view, and it's a view I've held for a long time. I've written a huge number of articles about it. And when people talk about sovereignty is people's ability, the ability of the public to control their lives and to make sure that the people they elect are able to pass the laws that matter to them. And the trouble is with Europe that is being very greatly eroded, and you're seeing it more and more over employment, over border controls, over human rights, over all sorts of stuff. And you've got a supreme judicial body in the European Court of Justice that projects down on this entire 500 million people territory a single unified judicial order from which there is absolutely no recourse. In my view, that has been getting out of control. There's too much judicial activism, there's too much legislation coming from the EU. And so I look at what the Prime Minister achieved the other day, and I have to say I think given the time he had, he did fantastically well. I think everybody should pay tribute to David Cameron for what he pulled off in a very short space of time. But I don't think anybody could realistically claim that this is fundamental reform of the EU or of Britain's relationships with the EU. And it's my view that after 30 years of writing about this, we have a chance actually to do something. I have a chance actually to do something. I would like to see a new relationship based more on trade, on cooperation, but as I say, with much less of this supranational element. So that's where I'm coming from, and that's why I've decided, after a huge amount of heartache, because I did not want to do anything. The last thing I wanted was to go against David Cameron or the government. But after a great deal of heartache, I don't think there's anything else I can do. I will be advocating vote leave, or whatever the team is called. I understand there are many of them. I think that is basically because I want a better deal for the people of this country. When you look at the EU now, it makes me think, as I've just been walking around this wonderful factory, it makes me think of some badly designed undergarment that has now become too tight in some places, far too tight, far too constrictive, and dangerously loose in other places. Is that the kind of undergarment we make here at David Nieper? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Knickers to the pessimists. How about that? Knickers, let's say knickers to the pessimists, knickers to all those who talk Britain down. Take back control of huge sums of money, take back control of immigration, take back control of our democracy. Let's vote for freedom. Vote for freedom on June the 23rd, and I believe that in this country, June the 24th will be Independence Day. Let's take
now Boris Johnson.
At the end of this campaign, I think you'll agree there is a very clear choice between those on their side who speak of nothing but fear of the consequences of leaving the EU, and we on our side who offer hope. Between those who have been endlessly rubbishing our country and running it down, and those of us who believe in Britain. They say we can't do it. We say we can. They say we have no choice but to bow down to Brussels. we say they are woefully underestimating this country and what it can do. If we vote leave, we can take back control of our borders, of huge sums of money, £10 billion a year net, of our tax-raising powers, of our trade policy, and of our whole law-making system, the democracy that is the foundation of our prosperity. And if we stand up for democracy, we will be speaking up for hundreds of millions of people around Europe who agree with us, but who currently have no voice. And if we vote leave and take back control, I believe that this Thursday can be our country's Independence Day.
Today, I think all of us politicians should thank the British people, because in a way they have been doing our job for us. They hire us to deal with the hard questions, and this year we gave them one of the biggest and toughest questions of all. Some people are now saying that was wrong and that the people should never have been asked in this way. I disagree. I believe it was entirely right and inevitable, and indeed that there is no way of dealing with a decision on this scale except by putting it to the people. Because in the end, this question is about the people. It's about the right of the people of this country to settle their own destiny. It's about the very principles of our democracy. In voting to leave the EU, it is vital to stress that there is now no need for haste, and indeed, as the Prime Minister has just said, nothing will change over the short term.
The will of the British people is an instruction that must be delivered. It was not a decision that was taken lightly, not least because so many things were said by so many different organisations about the significance of this decision. But I do not think it would be right for me to try to be the captain that steers our country to its next destination. We should aim to have a new Prime Minister in place by the start of the Conservative Party conference in October.
And make this our moment to stand tall in the world. That is the agenda for the next Prime Minister of this country. But I must tell you, my friends, you who have waited faithfully for the punchline of this speech, that having consulted colleagues and in view of the circumstances in Parliament, I have concluded that person cannot be me.
I have just been to Buckingham Palace, where Her Majesty the Queen has asked me to form a new government, and I accepted.
What people don't understand is that Britain, I think people in our country really don't understand how much people around the world in the UN want us to engage with them.
So they want you to
problems.
succeed, is what they want to forget your past as sort of saying whatever you want.
I think they want Britain to be. They want Britain to be there. They want a global Britain that is actively engaged with the world, and they're seeing it. Get out from under the burden of the European Union treaties and do a global free trade deal.
Foreign Secretary, thank you very much for talking to me.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Speaker, after 18 months of stealthy retreat, we have come from the bright certainties of Lancaster House to the Chequers Agreement. And far from making laws in Westminster, there are large sectors in which ministers will have no power to initiate, innovate, or even deviate. After decades in which UK ministers have gone to Brussels and expostulated against costly EU regulation, we are now claiming that we must accept every jot and tittle for our economic health with no say of our own and no way of protecting our businesses and entrepreneurs from rules now and in the future that may not be in their interests. If we pretend otherwise, we continue to make the fatal mistake of underestimating the intelligence of the public, saying one thing to the EU about what we are doing, and then saying another thing to the electorate. And given that in important ways, this is, in important ways, this is Bino or Brino or Brexit in name only. I'm, of course, unable to accept it, as I said, or to support it, as I said in the Cabinet session at Chequers. And I'm happy now to speak out against it and be able to do so. Mr. Speaker, it is not too late to save Brexit. We have time in these negotiations. We have changed tack once, and we can change again. The problem is not that we failed to make the case for a free trade agreement of the kind spelt out at Lancaster House. We haven't even tried. We must try now, because we will not get another chance to get it right. We should not and need not be stampeded by anyone. But let us, again, aim explicitly for that glorious vision of Lancaster House, a strong, independent, self-governing Britain that is genuinely open to the world, not the miserable, permanent limbo of Chequers, not the democratic disaster of ongoing harmonisation with no way out and no say for the UK. We need to take one decision now before all others, and that is to believe in this country and in what it can do. Because I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, that the UK's admirers, and there are millions, if not billions, across the world, are fully expecting us to do what we said. That was the vision of Brexit that we fought for. That was the vision that the Prime Minister rightly described last year. That is the prize that is still attainable. There is time. And if the Prime Minister can fix that vision once again before us, then I believe she can deliver a great Brexit for Britain.
News breaking that Boris Johnson, the Foreign Secretary, has also resigned from Theresa May's cabinet.
So it's 2.5 weeks to that summit, which is supposed to decide our Brexit future, and you think the Prime Minister should effectively rip up the withdrawal agreement, take the Irish plan out of there. What you're really saying is we should have a no-deal Brexit.
Well, no, the Prime Minister has already embarked on a strategy of getting rid of the existing Irish backstop, which is a big problem for the UK, because it seems to posit the idea of a border in the Irish Sea, which is totally unacceptable. What I want is to change the current state of the Brexit negotiations away from where they are, which is, I think, mired in confusion. We've got the EU rejecting the Chequers proposals. I think they're highly unsatisfactory. And the problem with Chequers is that in order to resolve what are actually easily fixable problems at borders, it keeps us in the EU's regulatory framework forever. I was there in the Leave campaign, and I played a role in that, and I argued for a vision of Britain. It's a fantastic opportunity for us. And I did argue for that within Cabinet for a very long time.
What many of your colleagues will see here, and what many of our viewers may see here, is that what you are doing is stirring up trouble for Theresa May on the eve of her party conference. You're putting forward the same arguments you've put forward for some time now, and you're just throwing rocks. And what this is really about is your own ambition.
I do care very deeply about this question. I think that unless we change tack now, we will make a mistake that will be very hard to unpick. You know, this argument that it's not the end of the world if we agree to Chequers now and then sort it out later. That is complete pie in the sky.
Why do you think the super Canada deal, as you describe it, is doable, even if it's desirable?
Well, it's what all great countries want to do with the EU. They want to have a big free trade deal. We were on the right path. And then, as you know, we had the election.
But if this is such a good idea and it is viable, why does the British government have no intention of following this course? Why does nobody in the EU say that this is doable without significant movement on Ireland?
If you stick with Chequers, I think what will happen is that the electorate of this country will look at what we, in the end, have produced, and they will say, how on earth was that the outcome of voting to leave?
What are you willing to do to stop a deal based on the Chequers proposals going ahead?
My duty now is to make the case for freedom.